Okay, this next video is going to be on percentage problems, and we're going to use this little equation here to solve them. I call it the percent equation. Now let me just say that this is a little different than the way the book does it, and I encourage you to read through some of the examples in the textbook to look at their method because you might like it better. Okay, and when we're doing these, you may use a calculator because you're probably going to have a lot of problems that have some long decimal answers, and I don't need you to work them out by hand. Use your calculator and it'll get done a lot quicker. Okay, so here's the percent equation, and this is how I like to do it. I like to make a proportion and solve it by cross multiplying. Okay, just like we did at the end of the last chapter. So the way I like to set it up is like this: part over whole equals percent over 100. Now the problems are worded in such a way that you could also think of this like this equation: is over of equals percent over 100. Because the part, and you'll see what I mean in a minute, often comes after the word is, and the whole thing comes after the word of. And one other thing I'm going to write in here, and that is the word what is going to tell you which where the variable goes. And for all of these, I'm going to use x. Okay, so look for what to figure out where you put the variable in this proportion here that you're going to solve by cross multiplying. So there's really three different kinds of problems that you're going to do, and I've got an example of all three, and then we'll look at a word problem. Okay, so again, this is what I'm going to use to solve it. Part over whole equals percent over 100, or again, you could think of that as is over of equals percent over 100. So here's the first one. It says 37 is what percent of 185? Okay, I'm going to underline what. And I'm going to circle actually this whole thing because see how what goes with the percent? That means what's going to go up here, or the variable I should say is going to go up here over 100. So 37 is what percent of 185? So if you think about this, 37 is the part, and 185 is the whole. Again, you could do is over of equals percent over 100 too. So let me write that down here. So I've got 37 is the part, 185 is the whole, equals the percent. Well, I don't know what that is, so I'm going to call that x over 100. Okay, I didn't leave myself enough room here to solve this, but I'm going to cross multiply. And I'm going to kind of do that on my calculator, but this part's easy. 37 times 100, well that's just 3,700, equals, and here, well actually this is easy too, x times 185 is 185x. So I'm solving for the percent. So again, I'm sorry I didn't leave myself much room here. Let me write this up over here. 3,700 equals 185x. So to solve that, and this is where the calculator will come in handy, I'm going to divide by 185 to both sides. And I will get that. Again, I'm sorry that it's really tight and kind of messy in there. So my answer will be 3,700 divided by 185, which is 20. So x equals 20. So my answer, what percent of, 37 is what percent of 185? Well, it's 20%. Okay, I left myself more room for these, so hopefully it'll be a little bit clearer. But again, we just use our equation, and this one's probably a good one to get started. Is over of equals percent over 100. And you just identify what goes where, and you identify where the variable goes by looking for the word what. Okay, so look, here's what, and it goes next to the word of. So x is going to go in of's place right up here. Okay, 64%. So that's 64 over 100 equals is over of. Again, the of is going to get the x, so it's 15 over x. Alright, so we'll cross multiply. We get 64x, and those two multiplied together give me 1,500. Alright, let me write that up here again. 64x equals 1500. To solve that, I divide both sides by 64. I will do that on my calculator, and I will get my answer. So 1500 divided by 64. Oops, sorry, the light gets in the way a little bit there. Equals 23.4375. So again, without a calculator, this would have been a pain. 23.4375. All right. So 15 is 64% of 23.4375. All right, so there's the answer. So again, it's just figuring out where the variable goes by looking for the word what and then setting up your equation, cross-multiplying, using your calculator, and solving. Not so bad, I hope. Okay, here's the last one. So again, let me write the equation here since you can't really see it anymore up there. So I'm going to write the bottom one. Is over of equals percent over 100, or again, part over whole equals percent over 100. Okay, so there's my little equation. I'll put it in a box. Okay, so what is? Here's what, and it's next to the word, oops, is. So where the is in this equation is going to get the x. Okay? So I would recommend, doing like I'm doing here, getting a different color pencil or a pen or whatever, and circling the word what and the word next to it to figure out where in your equation the x or the variable is going to go. Okay, so is over of equals percent over 100. So what is? So x goes in the is place. Now of, what's after of? Well, 3,500 goes down there. And this one I left, I wrote a little tricky on purpose. So 0.25%. We don't have to convert that. We're going to put 0.25 over 100, just like that. You don't have to do any converting in this method. In the textbook's method you do, and that works just fine. If you like that better, again, I highly encourage you to check that out. Okay, so here we go. We're going to cross multiply. 100x equals, and I'm going to do that part on the calculator. So 3,500 times 0.25 equals 875. Okay, and so I'm going to solve now, divide by 100, and you get your answer, and the answer is x equals 8.75. When you divide by 100, you move the decimal 2 places to the left to prove that I'm right. I will do it on here, and there it is, 8.75. Okay, let me clear all those guys. So 0.25%, well, that's a really small part of this number. So for it to be 8.75, that makes perfect sense. Okay, 50% is half. And so 0.25%, that's a really small part. So there you go. Here's the 3 different kinds of problems. Figure out where the variable goes in your proportion and then cross multiply and solve. So I'm going to give you a few word problems. They're going to be the same way. Sometimes they're worded differently, so it might be a little tricky to figure out exactly how to set it up. And here's one, and this is like one in the book that you'll have on your homework. It says the robotics team raised 150% of its fundraising goal. They raised $675. What was their fundraising goal? Well, it's a little tricky here. So is 675 the part or the whole? We know the percent. The percent is 150. So if you think about 150%, that's more than 100%. That's more than 1. So if they raised 150%, they raised more than their original goal. So even though $675 is going to be bigger than the whole thing, or the of part of the equation, that's okay, and that's because we have 150%. So here's the way this one's going to work. It's going to be the amount raised over the goal equals the percent over 100. Same thing as far as making a proportion and solving it. So they raised $675. In this case, it's really great that they raised more than what they were trying to raise. So even though this is going to be bigger than our goal, that's okay. It's going to be technically the part. So 675 over x, because we don't know what the goal was. So here it says, what was their goal? Okay, equals the percent, so 150 over 100. And just like before, we'll cross multiply. 675 times 100 is 67500. Just put 2 zeros on at the end. Multiply those together, we get 150x. We'll solve this by dividing both sides by 150. And we get x equals, let's see here. Hopefully you can see that okay. Don't want to cover up my work, so let me just slide over here a tiny bit. I'm going to cover it up anyway. Sorry about that. Okay, hopefully that's okay. 67500 divided by 150 is $450. Okay? 67,500 divided by 150 is 450. So that means their original fundraising goal was 450 bucks, but because they did more than 100%, they raised more than $450 and they raised 675 bucks. So the solving of these problems, I hope, is pretty straightforward and not too tricky. It's the setting them up that's the hard part. And if you think about it, hopefully you'll be able to determine what's the part and what's the whole and how it all works out. Okay, well that should be enough to get you through this assignment. And again, as I always say, please don't hesitate to let me know if you have any questions at all. Thank you.